The story begins in a castle by the sea, with someone telling a child named Chiron. They say to him, "Let me tell you an interesting story, Chiron. In Perseus, the deepest ocean in the world, mermaids still exist. Mermaids are more beautiful than any human, but beware, because they are not human. They seduce men with their singing and show them illusions that would drive any man mad." And here, Chiron wakes up from this dream, and a girl says to him, "Chiron, what's wrong?" And here, Chiron told her, "I had a dream." And this girl said in surprise, "A dream?" And here Chiron told her, "I dreamed of my brother, no, the late emperor, reading me a book when I was very young, a terrifying story about mermaids who kill people." And here he put his hand on her face and said, "Are you like them too? Since the day I took you as a battle prize until this moment, have you been wanting to kill me? Because I didn't let you go? Because I kept you here to prevent you from leaving? I suppose you could really kill me, just like the mermaids in the legend, and return to the ocean." But she grabbed his hands and said, "Don't worry. Let me sing you a lullaby." And she did just that, singing and saying, "Don't be afraid, Chiron, I won't kill you. As soon as we are born, we wait for the day we leave the ocean to meet a human. Not to kill them, but to find our eternal companion, our siren, the only person who finds me among the countless encounters in his life, who chooses me, and will share the rest of his life with me." Chiron said, "Milazine, as soon as you said my name, I considered you my siren. My siren, Chiron, I wish to be with you forever." But it is clear that this did not happen, as a mermaid shouted at her, saying, "You cannot. A mermaid and a human cannot promise each other eternal love. Never. You will only have one chance, and that's when you must leave your siren." And because Milazane knew the truth, she began to cry, and her tears fell on Chiron as he slept. She said to herself, "Because if she doesn't, Goodbye, Chiron." And she hugged him and said, "But I swear I will only love you, forever." And here we will return to the starting point to know their story. She starts telling and says, "In the not-so-distant past, when people still believed in myths, there was a man in the empire nicknamed Soul Reaper. It was said of him that he could turn a person to ash with a single glance, a monster who did not hesitate to kill for the sake of the empire." And here they mean Chiron, who clearly won the battle and no one else survived, but on his way, he found someone crying over his son who was killed by his followers. He was screaming, saying, "No! Why my son? Why? A terrible tyrant and a merciless angel of death." And when this father noticed Chiron, he shouted at him, saying, "Why? What did we do in God's name to be so cruel? The empire called this monster Chiron, and he is Archduke Chiron, ruler of Triton." And here the father said, holding his son, "Rebellion? You know very well that we did not participate in anything like that. The charges were fabricated against us. You have watched me all these years, and I have served His Majesty with the utmost loyalty." But Chiron approached him and said, "I don't know about that. All I know is that the emperor wants to destroy the Duchy of Barton." The father recoiled in fear. Chiron continued, "So you can stop resisting now, Archduke." But the Archduke said to him, "I am nothing but a dog to the emperor, serving that beast as your master. You are pathetic." So Chiron became angry and killed him. The Archduke continued to say, "I swear to you that your sins will only lead you to hell. I swear it." But after his death, Chiron said, "I told you to stop resisting." He looked at him coldly and continued, "You should have met your end with at least some dignity." Suddenly, when a room door opened, Chiron entered, saying, "This room." When he found animal skins brutally slaughtered in it, he said sarcastically, "And he said I would go to hell. I also don't see a man who owns this collection going to heaven." Then he turned to the large covered object and said to himself in surprise, "What is this?" So he put down his sword and went towards it, pulled off the cover, and found a mermaid looking at him. He was surprised by what he saw. The mermaid looked at him. Suddenly, his special assistant arrived and said, "Are you here, Your Highness?" It seems we have cleansed most of the castle." But Chiron asked him to be quiet. So when the assistant approached, he was startled and said to him, "Your Highness, this is a mermaid, a mermaid." Then Chiron looked at her and said, "I heard that Archduke Barton was an avid collector of rare pieces, but I never imagined he would hold a creature that you only hear about in legends." But the assistant said, "His collection isn't the problem, Your Highness. If you hurt a mermaid, you will die, as the legends say. And perhaps that is why Archduke Barton died." But Chiron said, "The reason for Archduke Barton's death is that he was planning a rebellion, not because of a fish." The mermaid looked at them calmly. Then she tried to speak and ask for help, but they didn't notice her. And the assistant asked Chiron, "What will you do now, Your Highness?" And Chiron said, "We take everything with us. Everything in this castle now belongs to His Majesty." And the assistant said, "The mermaid too, Your Highness?" And Chiron said, "That's right. Take a look at the other rooms as well." At that time, the mermaid looked around until she found a way to attract your attention, but she found nothing. So at the moment Chiron was about to leave, he said to the assistant, "You said the castle was evacuated, so it's time to—" And here Chiron turned to her as she was hitting the glass and trying to get out. And here Chiron smiled and said, "Now that's amusing." And the assistant, in fear, said, "Why suddenly? Do you think she's trying to attack us? At this rate, she'll kill herself first." But Chiron looked at her as she was trying to ask for help and said to the assistant, "I don't know about that. Maybe she's asking to join her old master." And he drew his sword. And the assistant, in horror, said to him, "You're going to kill her?" And Chiron smiled and said, "Why not? We must kill everyone in the castle. His Majesty orders it." And the assistant said, "Wait, Your Highness." But Chiron didn't listen to him and struck the glass with his sword, and it shattered. And the mermaid looked in astonishment. Then the glass suddenly disappeared, and she fell on Chiron and grabbed him. They looked at each other, and Chiron looked into her eyes and touched her face, saying to himself, "I didn't notice before, but those eyes." The mermaid was happy with his gentle touch, and he looked away shyly. This is a story from the not-so-distant past, a story of the legendary mermaid and her human, her Sirene. Suddenly, Chiron took her hand and said to his special assistant named Jan, "Yes?" And Chiron told him, "Take this mermaid and put her in some kind of tank, and bring her to me." And when she stood up, she looked at him with innocence. And Chiron to Jan, "No more questions until then." Then Chiron left for a room and said to himself, "This room. This is the second time I've been here." And here he remembered his first time when he was with his brother. Archduke Barton was bowing to them, saying, "The kingdom of Barton will surrender to the war and become the Duchy of Barton, and we will swear allegiance to the empire. Therefore, please, Your Majesty, have mercy on us." And here, Chiron was looking silently at this statue. At the time, his brother asked him and said, "Chiron, watch carefully." So Chiron smashed this statue, saying, "This place is as disgusting as ever." Suddenly, he turned around when Jan came and said to him, "Your Highness, we have brought the mermaid." And here the mermaid was looking at him in astonishment, and the assistant said, "I know you ordered her to be put in a tank, but—" And here Chiron smiled and said, "She's grown legs, hasn't she?" And the assistant said, "As soon as the water dried, she transformed." And here Chiron held her face and said, "So, this fish can also look human." Duke Barton was hiding a very valuable piece in his castle. Then he looked at her injured leg and said, "What is this?" And the mermaid trembled as Chiron told the assistant, "This is not the way to treat a war prize. Why did you leave these marks? Take better care of her, Jan." But the assistant said to him, "I wasn't the one who caused those wounds, sir. They were already all over her body when she broke the tank, and I suspect that Duke Barton was behind those wounds." And here she felt fear and trembled. And the assistant said, "Legends say that mermaid—" And here she remembered what Barton had done to her. He had whipped her and said to her, "Mermaids should shed tears of pearls, but she had not done so. And then he had shouted in her face, "But why don't you cry? Give it to me. Hand over the pearl, or else I will—" And here she was surprised when Chiron said to her, "Look at me. Can you hear me?" Then he said to himself, as he looked at her, "Was the old man fond of this kind of thing?" Then he touched her gently and said to himself as he looked into her eyes, "I really like those eyes." But suddenly Ian pushed him away and said to him, "Get away from her, sir." And here Chiron looked at him and said to him sternly, "What do you think you're doing?" And here, in tension, Ian said, looking at the mermaid, "Forgive me. They say a mermaid's voice can steal your soul." But Chiron said to him, "Enough of your legends. You've already gotten in my way once by summoning her." And the assistant said, "I just think that caution is best." And here, when she tried to speak, they were shocked and turned to her quickly. And here Chiron, in tension, said to her, "What?" And here she grabbed his clothes and smiled, saying, "I'm hungry." And here Chiron said to Ian, "Did you hear that?" And Ian, in tension, said, "Yes, you just asked me to feed her, sir." And here Chiron laughed, and she looked at him in astonishment. And here Chiron held her face and said, "I didn't think we would find such an interesting prize. Don't you wonder what will happen, Ian?"